the era of primordials, the brutal beginning of Greek gods. It was a time when the sky and the earth were lovers, and their children were so terrifying that their own father imprisoned them in the depths of the world. Well, in the beginning, there was, nothing. Not darkness, not light, not matter. It was only chaos. Now, when the ancient Greeks talked about chaos in texts like Hesiod's Theogony, they didn't mean a state of messy disorder. They pictured it as a vast, empty, yawning gap, the primeval emptiness of the universe before anything was. Then came Tartarus, the great abyss, a gloomy pit deep below the earth. And then Eros, the principle of procreative love, a force absolutely essential for the universe to start creating. Finally, from chaos itself came Erebus, the embodiment of darkness, and his sister, Nyx, the personification of night. These weren't gods like we usually think of them. They were the very things they represented. Section 2, the mother and the sky. In that moment, the physical cosmos we recognize began to take shape, with the sky doming over the earth. Gaia also brought forth the array of the mountains that scarred her surface and Pontus, the barren, raging sea. He would descend each night to cover her completely, and from their union, a new generation of beings was born. But it was a relationship that was about to turn toxic, kicking off a cycle of violence that would echo for generations to come. Section 3, a father's fear. The first children born from Gaia and Uranus were unlike anything the cosmos had seen. These were beings of terrifying power and monstrous form. First were the three Hecatonchus, the 100-handed ones. Cottus, Briareus, and Gyges each had 100 arms sprouting from their massive frames and 50 heads. And they possessed a strength so immense it was described as irresistible. Next came the three Cyclopes, Brontes, the Thunderer, Sterops, the Lightner, and Argus, the Bright One. They were giant, master craftsmen of fire and metal, but were most known for the single orb-like eye set right in the middle of their foreheads. Uranus, however, didn't look at his children with pride. He looked at them with hatred and fear. He found them monstrous and believed they were a threat to his power. In an act of unbelievable cruelty, as soon as each of these children was born, he refused to let them see the light, shoved them back deep into the hidden places of Gaia, imprisoning them within the very womb of the earth. She was the earth itself. Her children were trapped inside her own body, a constant, agonizing weight. Uranus, it was said, actually rejoiced in his evil deed, happy that his powerful offspring were locked away where they could never challenge him. After the monstrous Hecatonchus and Cyclopes, Gaia and Uranus had another set of children. They were powerful and looked more godlike than their older siblings, but they were still born into a world run by their father's tyranny and their mother's silent suffering. The sons were Oceanus, Cous, Crius, Hyperion, Iapetus, and the youngest and most ambitious of them all, Cronus. The daughters were Thea, Rhea, Themis, Mnemosyne, Phoebe, and Tethys. Unlike their imprisoned brothers, the Titans were allowed to walk free, but they lived under the oppressive rule of their father. All the while, Gaia's agony continued, a constant groaning from the depths of her being where her first children were held captive. The pressure was building, both literally and figuratively. She couldn't bear the pain any longer, and her love for Uranus had curdled into a thirst for vengeance. The earth itself was getting ready to fight back. The pain of carrying her imprisoned children was a constant torment, and her grief hardened into a plan for rebellion. From her own body, she created a new, strange, gray element flint. From this, she fashioned a massive and terrible weapon, an adamantine sickle, a jagged blade so strong it could cut through anything. Clutching the sickle, she gathered her Titan children. She told them all about their father's wickedness, his cruelty to her, and to their older siblings who were languishing in the dark. She pleaded with them to rise up, to punish their father, and finally end her suffering. but the Titans were terrified. Uranus was the ruler of the universe, their all-powerful father. They just stood there in silence, too afraid to defy him, all except one. Cronus, the youngest of the Titans, described as the most terrible and cunning of her children, felt no fear. He stepped forward and declared he would do the deed. Relieved, Gaia gave him the fearsome weapon, hid him in ambush, and laid out the plan. The trap was set. The youngest son was about to challenge the sky itself. Section 6. The youngest son. The plan was as simple as it was brutal, bringing darkness with him as he came to lie with Gaia, as the sky moved to envelop the earth. In one hand, he grabbed hold of his father, and with the other, he swung the great adamantine sickle. The deed was done. The sky retreated from the earth, wounded and defeated. The age of Uranus was over. The castration of Uranus wasn't just an act of revenge. The fearsome, furies-winged goddesses of vengeance who would hunt down anyone who killed a parent or broke a sacred oath. Also born were the Gigantes, a race of powerful giants, and the Malaya, the nymphs of the ash trees. A white foam began to spread out from the immortal flesh, and from this sea foam, a goddess emerged. This was Aphrodite, the goddess of love, desire. With Uranus defeated, Cronus became the new, undisputed king of the cosmos. He and his Titan siblings were now the rulers. Section 8. Section 8. A cursed throne. Worse still, Cronus immediately showed his true colors. Fearing their monstrous power, just as his father had, he betrayed the entire cause of the rebellion. He refused to release the Hecatonchires and Cyclopus, and instead cast them right back into the darkness of Tartarus. And so, the new king ruled with a dark shadow hanging over his reign. He had seized power through patricide, and now lived in constant fear of his own children, the Olympians. The origins of the universe are seldom peaceful. Instead, they are defined by a cycle of friction, stolen dominion, and the inevitable rebellion of one generation against the next. While the downfall of Uranus concluded the first cosmic era, the looming threat against Cronus guaranteed that the struggle for the throne was far from over. This shadow of betrayal hung over the entire Titan reign, setting the stage for Zeus's arrival and the world-altering conflict that would eventually tear the heavens apart. If you want to hear the story of how Cronus tried to defy fate by swallowing his own children, and how one of them survived to fulfill that prophecy, make sure you're subscribed and hit the notification bell. Let us know in the comments which of these primordial beings you find the most fascinating. When the Titans fell, Zeus's grand experiment began. The Great War was over. Its 10 years of cosmic battle had finally ended, and the Titans were defeated. From the peak of Mount Olympus, a new monarch surveyed his dominion. Zeus, Lord of the Sky, wielder of the thunderbolt, and now the undisputed ruler of the universe. But his kingdom was silent. Victory was absolute, but the world below was an empty stage. And what's a king without subjects? With his father, Cronus, and the other Titans locked away in the dark pits of Tartarus. Zeus's first great act as ruler wouldn't be one of war, but of creation. This is the story of his first, ambitious, and ultimately failed attempt to populate the world. This is the story of Zeus's grand experiment, the Silver Age of Man. Section 1. The Impossible Standard. To be fair to Zeus, the Olympians' first attempt at creation had gone almost too well. This was the legendary Golden Age. The gods crafted a race of mortals who lived in effortless harmony. The earth provided everything they needed, no work required. They never grew old, and death was like peacefully drifting off to sleep. They were pure, noble, and beloved by the gods who made them. When their time was done, their spirits became guardians, wandering the earth to watch over mankind. But that was the first draft. Now, Zeus wanted to create his own version of humanity. This wouldn't be a continuation, but a replacement, a new design from a new divine administration. It was a chance to shape the world in his image, and establish the relationship between creator and created on his own terms. The stage was set for a new beginning. But a question lingered in the divine air. What kind of mortals would a god like Zeus create? Would they be a noble testament to his power? Or would they be something else entirely? Section 2. The Grand Experiment. The Silver Age. Zeus's new creation, the Silver Race, was different from the very start, and not in a good way. They were, to put it bluntly, a major downgrade. Their most bizarre and defining trait was a ridiculously long childhood. For 100 years, a person of the Silver Age remained a kid, living at home under their mother's care. Imagine a full century spent as a helpless, squabbling child, totally dependent and lacking any real wisdom. This prolonged infancy stunted them in every way. When they finally hit adulthood, their time was tragically short and filled with strife. It's because they'd never learned maturity or respect. Their adult lives were consumed by pointless arguments with each other. They were basically giant toddlers with none of the emotional tools to handle being grown-ups. But their greatest failing, the one that sealed their fate, was their attitude toward the gods. The Silver Race was flagrantly impious. They refused to honor the Olympians, neglected the sacrifices, and ignored the basic gestures of respect that the gods demanded. I mean, what's a god without worship? What's a creator without a little acknowledgement? Zeus, this wasn't just an oversight, it was a slap in the face. He had given them life, and in return, they gave him nothing but arrogant silence. This grand experiment was already starting to sour. Section 3. The Breaking Point. Divine Disappointment. From his throne on Olympus, Zeus watched all of this with growing frustration. He wanted subjects who would recognize his power and give him the honor he was due. Instead, he got a race of perpetual adolescents, bickering in the dirt, completely oblivious to the divine majesty that surrounded them. Their immaturity wasn't cute. It was a fundamental flaw that made them incapable of their one real job, worshiping the gods. The poet Hesiod tells us Zeus was furious because they honored neither the gods nor each other, okay? They had no sense of justice, no respect for one another, and absolutely no reverence for their creator, okay? The deal was supposed to be simple. Gods provide life and order. Mortals provide honor and sacrifices, okay? The Silver Age humans broke that sacred contract before the ink was even dry. Zeus, the god who brought order to the cosmos by overthrowing his own father, wasn't about to tolerate this kind of disorder in his own creation. The experiment had run its course, and the conclusion was obvious. It was a failure. This race was a mistake, and for a god of absolute power, there's really only one way to correct a mistake that big. A disappointment curdled into divine wrath, and a decision was made. The Silver Age had to go. Section 4. The Judgment and the Purge. Zeus's judgment was swift and absolute. He didn't bother with a plague or a famine, okay? He simply wiped them from the face of the earth. The ancient texts say he destroyed them, that the earth itself swallowed them whole. An entire generation of humanity erased for their bad attitude. It was a brutal lesson. The king of the gods was not a doting parent who would put up with endless misbehavior. He was a monarch, and disloyalty would be met with annihilation. Yet, even in destruction, there was a hierarchy. The noble spirits of the Golden Age became guardians on earth, the souls of the Silver Age. They were given a lesser fate, becoming blessed spirits of the underworld, the god and afterlife. Sure, but it was in the shadows of second-class honor for a second great creation. Their legacy wasn't to guide the living, but to serve as a permanent reminder of a failed experiment. And so, the earth was silent once more. The canvas was wiped clean. But the lessons Zeus learned from this failure would have terrifying consequences. If a race of coddled, immature children was a bust, maybe the opposite would work. Maybe what the world needed wasn't passivity, but something harder, stronger, and far more terrible. Section 5. The Coming Storm the Bronze Age. Having cleared the board, Zeus started over. Third time's the charm, right? This time, there would be no coddling, no century-long childhood. For his third attempt, Zeus created a race of men from ash trees. This was the Bronze Age. These guys were not thinkers or worshippers. They were warriors, born and bred for conflict. They were tough, hard-headed, and utterly consumed by their love for violence and the bloody deeds of Ares, the god of war. Everything about them was bronze. Their weapons, their tools, even their houses were made of bronze. Their hearts were like stone, and their strength was terrifying. This was a complete overcorrection, where the silver race was passive and impious. The bronze race was aggressive and full of hubris. They ate meat instead of grain, and their entire existence was a relentless cycle of violence that ended, predictably, with them destroying each other. Zeus had swung the pendulum from one extreme to the other. He traded a failed experiment in docility for a terrifying success in brutality, unleashing an age of violence that would eventually require an even more dramatic solution: the Great Flood. The story of the Silver Age is a crucial, often overlooked chapter in our mythology. It reveals a tough lesson Zeus learned at the dawn of his reign. Creating life is a messy and often disappointing business. The failure of his grand experiment directly led to the terrifying Bronze Age warriors, kicking off a chain of events that would see the world destroyed and reborn yet again. It shows that the path from the gods to us wasn't a straight line, but a chaotic series of divine trials and errors. The tale of the Bronze Men and the Great Flood that washed them away is a story for another time. Let us know in the comments which age of man you find most fascinating. And if you want to keep exploring the epic and often brutal timeline of Greek mythology, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more stories from the ancient world.